You're listening to
The Living Force.
Be mindful of the living force, young Padawan.
A Utini podcast.
Trust the Force.
Episode 25. Black Spire Roundtable Part 2. On this episode, New York Comic-Con Update, Utini News, and Black Spire Roundtable Part 2.
This is where the fun begins.
With your hosts, Corey Helton, Eric Eilerson, and Charles Hankel.
When I was telling Corey, Charles, I got the Spark of the Resistance audiobook today. So I'm going to start that up. I'm hoping to get the physical copy later this week to kind of, listen in the car and then pick up in the book where I left off and then go back, try to do that thing that Kindle does automatically, but I don't like Kindle books. It's so weird. I feel like a bad millennial every time I talk about that. I'm like, I want my paper.
Guys, you remember me talking about that's how I got, so much Legends material done with, right? Like, I told you when I was in, I think I was, a sophomore in college or something, and I discovered that you could pirate ebooks. Yeah, I learned how to do it, and I bought, a 4-generation-old Kindle because it was, $30 off of eBay, and I found all of these Star Wars books, and I read, literally, 100 Legends books in a matter of, 2 years or something like that because of that. So, not to openly support pirating, but I own them all now, so I guess it's somewhat okay, right? But
you're practically the Hondo Onaka of ebooks.
Exactly.
No, you're still holding on. Let go.
Welcome to episode 25 of the Living Force podcast. That's right, we are a quarter of the way to 100 episodes, so this is practically an anniversary episode. Welcome to it. I am one of your hosts, Eric Eilerson, and with me, as always, are the doctors themselves. One of them still wearing a name tag. One of them being Dr. Corey Helton. Hello.
Charles, do you just walk around with your name tag on like Dr.
First of all,
Douchebag?
it's an ID badge. If it was a name tag, it would be disposable, and I'd be scared if your doctor was wearing one of those. Second of all, I literally just walked in from work to record with you guys. You're welcome.
You're great, Dr. Charles Hankel. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Folks, as the episode title tells you when you click on these things, unless you just auto-listen, I don't know if that's a thing, but if you just blindly trust us, that's kind of cool.
Auto-listen?
Do you ever, is that a thing? You can just open up your podcast app and it'll just start playing whatever your newest download is?
I don't think so.
It absolutely doesn't, but I'm bad at podcast tech. So likely you're not a person that has that technology. You clicked on the title of this episode, which is the Black Spire Roundtable Part 2. We will be getting into that in just a second. If you missed our previous episode on Black Spire, start there, then come back. But before we get into that, we have a little bit of news to cover because, guys, this past weekend was the New York Comic-Con, and my God, there was one major publishing panel. There was a couple other small ones, but one major one that gave us a lot of news.
Yeah, Jesus, man, freaking Lucasfilm and Del Rey. I really wish that they would remember that there is a convention dedicated to Star Wars, because we did not get any news like this like we did at San Diego Comic-Con or New York Comic-Con. They just dropped a lot of really huge news at both of those things, and man, we just didn't get this much of celebration. Maybe they didn't want to compete with all the other crazy news.
Yeah,
but
I find it interesting this year because there's so much media coverage about Episode 9, right? That's clearly the focus. We're going to the end of the year that we don't want to get in the way of that by any means, but at the same time, you still got to find ways to promote the other stuff that's happening immediately afterwards, or there's going to be a giant sales dip. So it's interesting that they're using these kind of cons to give us some news. So what we're going to do is go through a few of the bullet points here real quick. There is a full...
Just in case you missed
and
it.
if you did miss it, there's a full article over on utini.com that I wrote in the back of a car on a road trip, and then Charles put together on the weekend.
Classic Utini fashion.
That's the level of dedication
That's
we have
right.
here at the
I typed it on an iPad and then hooked up to my phone as a hotspot to save it in a Google Doc to email it to Charles.
I was at Home Depot. Eric messaged me, hey, can you do this? I'm like, yeah, nah.
But that article is all up there, and it includes the following. So, guys, I'm going to go through these bit by bit. I just want your basic reactions, right? So, first of all, we got news that Project Luminous is going to be officially revealed, announced in January of 2020. So we're finally we have a date for news, which is kind of like
it's like an announcement about an upcoming announcement.
Yes, it's a teaser for a trailer.
Yes, it's kind of weird.
But I did
Yes.
find it interesting that we got a new little tagline, right? That said, the Force is what gives the Jedi its power or whatever, and then it says, until ... Project Luminous.
Yeah, very odd, right? Like, what the heck does that mean? Is there going to be a new
It's gonna
Force?
be-
I don't think so. So what is
It's going to
that
be the
talking
origin of midi-chlorians. That's just all there. It's just going to be an entire comic series about that. It's just going to be like an anatomy lesson with
Well,
science.
Do you
and-
remember George Lucas said there was some interview where he said that he was going to go more into like the microorganism type stuff in his sequel trilogy? So maybe they're
Yes,
just doing it in
yes.
book form.
That could be it.
It's going to be like the Magic School Bus.
For midichlorians. They're
Yes.
the powerhouse of the Force.
Yeah.
But I do think that this kind of confirms that something in Episode 9, and confirms might be a strong word, but I think something in Episode 9 will fundamentally
strong.
change the ideology of the Force, because they're not even announcing or revealing anything until post-movie, so they're going to wait till everyone's seen it. So I'm guessing that something splits, that something maybe connects, using the word
Yeah.
luminous, right? Connects kind of the beings in
Maybe.
the Force to this realm, maybe using the world between worlds, something like that. But a lot of speculation.
Maybe.
We will get answers in January. But another major announcement, speaking of Episode 9, one con later than we thought, we got a novelization author, and it is none other than Ray Carson, author of Most Wanted.
Yes.
She's doing it.
Which is why it's
Excellent
exciting.
Yes!
choice. Yeah.
Most Wanted is one of the biggest welcome surprises of new canon, I think. And so I'm really excited to see what she'll do with the actual novelization. I think she did so well with Most Wanted just as ancillary material. I think she would have knocked it out of the park if she had written the solo novelization itself
Yeah,
as well. So I'm
totally.
excited to see what she'll do.
Yeah.
Maybe best or second best young adult
Yeah.
book. I don't know. Is that too?
I don't
too
think
bold?
it's too bold. I mean, currently in the Utini
fine
Cantina
with it.
Facebook group, if you're a member of that, we have kind of a March Madness bracket challenge of all the YA now and up, and Most Wanted still in contention in the running. So that will be coming out on March 3rd, that novelization, which I think is perfect timing. We're out of the movie just enough. I think it may have just gotten out of theaters, depending on how big your theater is, and then you'll be kind of starving for.
Maybe Blu-ray yet?
Maybe
Is it too
just,
early for
I think it's
Blu-ray?
gonna hold us over.
They're getting so earlier and earlier with Blu-ray
Yeah, maybe
releases, it
digital.
seems like.
So March 3rd, Ray Carson writing the novelization for Episode 9. Keep an eye out for that. Next was maybe my favorite announcement, which is the second Alphabet Squadron book is officially released as Shadowfall, coming out on June 30th, next summer.
Should we call it an accidental announcement? You think that
At first,
you think that the tweets
Probably.
of like it being in the paperback and they were like, "Oh snap, we forgot that was printed there," because that kind of sounds like, that would
yeah,
really
so
surprise
if
me.
you weren't following along on Twitter with the announcements this weekend, our friend Brad Whipple over at Friends of the Force was breaking a lot of info on his Twitter. He did a great job covering the con. And one of the things he did was pick up the Alphabet Squadron paperback, which was debuted at New York Comic Con. And in the back of it, it had, a full chapter of Resistance Reborn, which was a great read. But two, it had a little page that said, pick up the next book in the Alphabet Squadron saga, Shadowfall, in June. And he was like, wait, what? And this hadn't been announced yet.
Yeah.
Well, I think the other thing that points towards it maybe being an accident was once they put the tweet out, didn't they say spring?
Yeah, they said spring
too.
on the
They said
Twitter.
like spring
Yeah.
2020, and then we found out it was actually June.
I think
so
they had
they were not
I
prepared.
think they had the official announcement ready for the panel, but because everyone at the panel got a paperback copy of Alphabet Squadron, I heard. So I think the ideal was to announce it at the panel, then give everyone the paperback that had the announcement in the back. But I think they were running a lot of promotions to like win free stuff at the booth. So I think Brad did a challenge, and they just gave him the paperback as a prize, and maybe they weren't supposed to do that.
Yeah.
But yes,
sure.
so excited. I mean, based on our roundtable of this book earlier this year, y'all know how much I love Alphabet Squadron, and we were pretty favorable as a whole.
Oh,
So
yeah.
very excited for that.
I was not like in love with Alphabet Squadron the way you guys were, but like I get warm and fuzzy inside thinking about this next book because like it's a trilogy and we don't have many of those. So that I have like I love series books and I always love them in Legends. So
Well, and
I'm
one of the
super excited.
biggest, if I remember correctly, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, Corey, but one of the biggest things that you had wrong with it was like the pacing, that it felt like it took a while to get everyone together and have things start to happen. So you can kind of hit the ground running with book 2 and book 3.
Exactly. Yeah, he's like, we already know everybody really well, and like, I have an idea of the big picture and stuff. So like, I think this is like the first really gritty, sequel book we've ever gotten like this. It just starts off with all new characters. Like Aftermath was kind of like that, but it's still, I don't know. This feels different.
And if we know anything about trilogies, it's the second book. It's gonna be real sad.
Yes.
So we'll look for that in June. Last couple things. If you're a comic book fan and you've been following the Star Wars line of comics, all of those series are coming to an end at the end of this year, under the Destination Hoth banner. So basically, all the books that have been going lately have taken place between episodes 4 and 5. And now all those comics will kind of come to a head with one final issue at the end of the year. And then starting January 1st, the Star Wars main book will be relaunching with a new issue number 1, so you can jump right on, and it's going to take place immediately after Empire Strikes Back. It's going to be written by Charles Soule, and some of the preview art, which I believe is Jesus Saiz, if I remember correctly, shows like Luke's hand falling and the lightsaber falling out of it, like right from the start. So maybe we'll find out how Maz gets the lightsaber. Maybe we'll see how Luke gets a new tailor that has black clothing. Maybe we'll see him go to Tatooine and build a new lightsaber out of Qui-Gon's crystal. Like, who knows?
This is my favorite time period, is like around Empire and stuff. So I'm really jacked about this. And like we talked to that episode a couple back about like getting into comics for the first time. And then they dropped this announcement. This is like,
it's a great time.
Perfect time to jump into comics for the first time. I've been wondering about this too, because I've been so slammed this week. I haven't really had a chance to read up on the comic news. What all are they relaunching? They're launching Star Wars Mainline.
There's a new Vader comic
else?
that'll be coming out. That's like,
okay. Oh yeah, I saw that announcement.
Him post Luke rejecting him essentially. So we get to see what that's like.
Is Afra officially over now?
I think this series will be done, but they did say there's a lot more Afra to come. So I don't think they announced a date for her new book, but she's still going.
Okay. So they've at least announced a new Star Wars mainline and a new Vader mainline.
So we will be all set.
And Charles Soule is busy because he's got the Rise of Kylo Ren series too, which, by the way, he tweeted you should read before going to see
the first
Rise
issue
of
release.
Skywalker.
Yeah, the first issue releases that Wednesday.
Yeah.
So I'll be picking that up and reading it 18 quadrillion times.
Oh yeah.
All right, last two things here. There was a new anthology book that was announced about the Clone Wars for kind of like, I think middle grade readers is the idea that they're taking known Clone Wars episodes and arcs and kind of rewriting them and putting them in a book. So there's a ton of cool authors, including Zoraida Cordova, who's doing a Ventress story, and Rebecca Rowanhorse, who's doing a Maul story, she tweeted. So, I mean, anything that gets us more Clone Wars, I'm all about it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that will be next August 25th. So we got a little bit to wait for that, but
oof. Is this Celebration? Is it August?
Yeah, that's the weekend, I guess, isn't it?
Next...
So I guess it'll be coming home from Celebration, and we'll already obviously have seen Season 7, so we'll be ripe for that. Sorry, I skipped one on my little outline here. I wrote it so nicely. There's a new book by George Mann, who is the author of Star Wars Myths and Fables, which you'll remember is one of my favorite dark horses from this past year. I thought it was phenomenal. Which is Star Wars Dark Legends, which is basically the spooky version of Myths and Fables that's going to be coming out next Halloween. Yeah. I mean, we talked, guys, about how that format was perfect for a sequel because it was all individual stories. And it looks like, I'm pretty sure he heard us. I'm sure, George, you're a listener. Awesome. Thank you for taking our advice.
I'm sure that's exactly why he did it. He probably called him up after hearing us talk about it and was like, listen, these guys, they want a new book, so I got to do it. I'm sorry.
I think he must have just had too much fun writing that Dark Wraith short story, and he was like, I just need a whole book of these.
And they did reveal that the first story, I believe, in that collection will be a story about the Grand Inquisitor from Rebels in the vein of Nosferatu, which is so fun.
Awesome.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
But guys, the biggest announcement, kind of bar none, was the 100% surprise announcement. Like, I don't think anyone in their right mind imagined this would happen, but not only is Thrawn's story continuing, we are getting a new trilogy of Thrawn books starting in May?
Yes. Where did this announcement? We were all so shocked on our Slack team when these news were dropping. Like, people were posting the screenshots and stuff into our main channel, and like, Man, what the heck? I think all of us, I don't know, I don't want to speak for both of you, but I think I can speak for both of you when I say our first initial reaction was kind of like, really? More Thrawn? But as soon as we figured it out, it's ascendancy, like the Chiss ascendancy, and it's going to be Thrawn's origin story. Like, I'm like pretty freaking excited now, actually.
Definitely jazzed for that because I think our biggest issues around kind of for all of us in our roundtable for Thrawn treason and stuff was some of the interplay with Thrawn and some of the Imperials and the fact that he was a little too unbeatable. And now to have a series that all takes place before the first Thrawn book, which we all love, to the time where he is young, where he is learning, and that will give us more Chiss lore, more maybe about second sight, third sight stuff. Maybe
we have little to no knowledge of Chiss culture.
Like, no, virtually none.
Like this is
even
Wikipedia, uncharted territory.
We're gonna go into the unknown regions. We're gonna see Thrawn and Aralani bang. It's gonna be great.
I think you guys will agree too that like some of our biggest problems with like some of the canon material has been sort of I would call it like kind of forced like collaboration between multiple projects. Like, and I think that Thrawn being so involved in the Rebels TV show honestly maybe hindered Zahn a little bit as an author in his freedom to kind of create things. So like seems like an origin story, which I imagine he will have a lot more creative freedom in, which really gets me excited.
It's going to be closer to his Legends material because you're absolutely right. What he was writing was butting right up to stuff that we already knew what happened from Rebels.
Yeah, and even the first Thrawn, even just Thrawn, the canon Thrawn novel was really flipping good and had nothing to do with anything. And I think it's because they let Zahn just kind of go wild. So,
but yeah, I think that it'll be cool to finally get some good Chiss information. Maybe like we get a frame story with like where Thrawn is now. Maybe he's like telling the story of his past in a way. But if nothing else, we're gonna get a lot more of Thrawn learning. We're going to get a lot more Chiss, and I can't wait. Again, that Thrawn Ascendancy trilogy.
It's a trilogy. It's a named
so that
trilogy, too.
All this bullshit we had the last one, like, is it really? I don't know. Like, it is. It's coming, and it's going to be on May 5th.
It's funny, though, right? Because it's like, that's like talking about how the original trilogy is a trilogy. Oh, but by the way, there are like 8 more films, you know?
That's true.
It's like, it was the end of the Thrawn trilogy, quote unquote, but we could just get another trilogy and then another one and then another. Zahn's going to pump them out.
I know, so what, the Thrawn trilogy, we're going to have to clarify what we mean when we say
it's the OT, which stands for the original Thrawn, and then it'll be the PT, which is the prequel Thrawn. And then I was on Friends of the Forest last night, which I think should be up right now for this week's episode with our own Meg Dowell, and we were talking about this, and we just said, you know what? What if he does his OT and he does his PT, and then we don't get more Thrawn and Ezra until the sequel Thrawn trilogy?
That's coming
like
eventually, whether it's Zahn writing it or something else. So
we'll see.
You know, it's coming.
Well, guys, those were all the updates from New York Comic Con. Corey Charles, one thing you're most excited for out of that list. What do you got?
Tross novelization.
All right. Yep.
I'm pretty. I told you guys I picked up my pull list from my comic store for the first time last week after my night shift, and that was so satisfying. Going to the comic store, picking up books that I've kind of been waiting for, and getting emails that they've arrived. Like, I'm really excited to be a comic book fan. Like, finally, to have a good store I can go to and pick things up. So I'm kind of excited about getting into comics for the first time.
And for me, it's the Alphabet Squadron, Shadowfall. Can't wait. It's gonna be flippin' sweet. All right, before we take a break and get back into Black Spire, I want to throw it to you, Corey, just for a hot second, because we got a few more Utini collections this week. Tell some folks about it.
Yeah, so we have a bunch of new collections come up on the site. I sent up an email. I think that email went out either today or yesterday. I can't remember. Either Monday or Tuesday of this week, kind of showing the last month. We're going to try to do these monthly recap emails where it shows you all the books that came out that month, some of the big collections we've added. And we had so many collections added to the site the previous month that I couldn't even include them all. I was just like, all right, I'm going to limit it to 3. I can't put like 20 of them in there. But check out the collections page we have. We've been talking a lot about it lately, but some new cool ones were put up recently. We have a Princess Leia that's been it's been a coming soon for like 6 months on the site. We finally got that one done. There's a Pilots collection, and Charles, you put together sort of a Halloween / horror collection, which is pretty neat. I don't want to be too obnoxious about plugging Patreon on the show too terribly much. But one of the things we're putting together for our Patreon is sort of an extra bonus show with some of the extra team members we have at Utini. And if I understand correctly, they did their first episode on, what book was it? It
was on 2. It was on Death Troopers and Red Harvest.
Yes, which are in your collection.
They are. Yeah, they're 2 of the kind of crossover Star Wars and horror type stories. So yeah, the collection is just if you like horror, but it, is the perfect time of year. It's why we launched it now. So check it out if you're in that October Halloween mood, and if you just love it, like Freddie, who was on that extra episode. He's a big horror fan, big Star Wars fan, and you can check it out any time of the year.
Yep,
100%.
absolutely.
All right, last thing before we go, Corey, do you want to give one last tease of something that might be coming pretty soon?
We are getting really, really close to launching video content.
I got a webcam.
Guys. Like, so
That's
if you
the
would
most
rather
behind the scenes, I have a webcam.
I now know what you look like.
That's right. Eric's face is no longer a blurry
2007,
2005. Yes, like a flip phone quality. Now he actually looks like a person behind a webcam, which is great. He's
That's what
uglier
it
than
is,
I thought
yeah.
it would be, but I can tolerate that. That's right. Yeah, we're getting really close, guys. This coming up probably middle of the month of October is kind of our loose plan. So, if you don't want to watch, if you don't watch our ugly mugs as we record, we're probably going to try to live stream stuff. We'll see how that goes. You can always continue to listen via audio. We will absolutely be continuing to edit and post these just like we always have been. But if you want to see our ugly faces, then you're welcome to join.
All right, well, I need to take a break from your 2 ugly faces for a bit, so let's hear from a UTD member, and then we'll jump right back in to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge Black Spire. Be right back.
Hi, this is Jared Mays coming to you with a Star Wars comics recommendation, and that's Lando by Charles Soule with art by Alex Maleev. It debuted in 2015, and it takes place before we meet Lando in The Empire Strikes Back. At the time, the only stories centered around Lando were the Neil L. Smith books from the 80s. Which I think we can say were certainly some of the weirder Star Wars books. But this story is the seminal Lando story. It's also the Lobot story you didn't know you needed. Soule wove together an incredible cast of both new and familiar characters. At its core, it's a heist story, but it's also very personal, perfectly spooky. It's got romance, it's got rogues, it's got betrayal, it's got bounty hunters, it's also got smugglers, and it's also about Sith. It'll surprise you, delight you, and maybe even break your heart. What more do you need? You can order it on utini.com, and may the Force be with you.
And we're back. That was fine. Charles, let's go.
All right. So we're going to jump back into Star
Eric's
Wars.
not in a hurry, is he?
You weren't ready.
I'm sorry, whoever did that cameo. It was just as good as anyone else has
Maybe.
ever done. Don't be fooled by that. Probably, maybe. Yeah, so let's jump right back into part 2 of our Black Spire Roundtable. So if you have not heard part 1, then you should probably go listen to that first. But we had just jumped into our basically overarching questions section. And we had just covered kind of Batuu as a planet. And now I want to talk about Archex as a character. So, both of you all have read Phasma, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I have not read Phasma. So I actually read this book, which is kind of a sequel, before ever reading that book. And so
Trilogy.
I need to... What's that?
Part 2 of the trilogy.
Part 2,
Probably, honestly.
maybe. Probably, maybe. Yeah, so I want to hear your views then on whether or not it was difficult to accept Archex in the role that he played in this novel after seeing him do some, what I've heard are pretty awful things in Phasma with torturing Vi, in basically anything that he may have done in that novel. Was it difficult to accept him as a hero?
I don't think so in a way, because of the way Phasma ends. He's by no means a hero at the end of Phasma, don't get me wrong, but he is beaten down. He is questioning organically throughout the book, which I think is one of Delilah Dawson's strengths, is that her characters evolve at a very natural pace, so it never seems rushed. And I think even in this book, too, he had a very natural character evolution. So if he had been like, they picked him up off of Syria or the Syrian planet, wherever he was.
From
Syria, wherever he was. And he had been like, oh yeah, let's go set up the base. I'm in the Resistance. I would have been like, okay, that's bad. But Violet Dawson's good at writing. So I really did find him relatable, and I think that his struggle with fighting against his programming consistently throughout the book really helped that along.
Yeah, I think it was definitely sort of a case of like there's good in him, like, and it's kind of apparent throughout the book. Like even with his active torture, like I don't know, Vi was tortured, but like not like
don't say not that bad,
not that torture,
not like Game of Thrones torture. I mean, it was torture, but like it was very PG rated, I think. In
she got food and water. What more do you want?
Yeah, she did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think honestly, Cardinal had a droid with him that was sort of like encouraging him and helping keep Vi alive and stuff. And honestly, I think the droid was kind of more brutal than Cardinal was. I would argue, because I don't know, but no, I thought it felt pretty natural seeing his. Like, I like that he didn't, like Eric said, like he didn't just come in right out the gate like super gung ho about the Resistance. Like, he was really questioning this entire book, and yeah, I thought that was done really well.
Yeah. Okay. That's great to hear. Whenever I read, they kept referencing things that had happened in Phasma, and at first I was wondering if it was going to hurt me for having not read that book, but it really didn't. I don't think. I mean, this is a self-contained story, and they do enough explaining in it for you to pick up all the important bits. I still want to go back and read Phasma.
Yeah.
And I'll get there.
Phasma is very good. It's kind of like one of those, I think, hidden gems in canon. It's a massive book too. Phasma is a big fat like hardback.
Yeah, I don't even have it on my bookcase.
I think that's one of the things about Phasma too, is that it doesn't really have ramifications in the EU. Like, you get to learn stuff about the Phasma character, and now, of course, you get to meet Vi and Cardinal, which wasn't a big deal until this book. But at the same time, I was interested in what that would be like not having read Phasma. So, Charles, I'm glad to hear that from your perspective as someone who, like, is very aware of this universe but still hadn't read the book. I think that a lot of people were nervous about that. So, if you are listening to this, and again, you don't care about the spoilers and you just kind of want to hear us talk about it before you read it, and you haven't read Phasma, you're going to be fine.
Yeah, totally. There's some cool, really minor details. I don't think this is really a spoiler, so I'll share it. If you're afraid of spoilers, then obviously you shouldn't probably be listening to this episode. But like minor spoiler in Phasma, like her armor is made of like the ship armor, like from the Naboo starfighters,
from Padme's
like
ship,
that class of ship that. Yeah, that like chrome armor, that's what her armor is made of, which is why it's so...
I didn't know that.
It's why it's so reflective of like blaster bolts and stuff, and it's why it's chrome and shiny. It's made of this ship armor that they make.
Yeah, she peels it off this ship, and they find this like essentially like 3D printer-esque thing that makes armor, and then she just feeds it in and makes her own armor.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty sick.
That's
like,
awesome, actually.
Yeah, there's some really good stuff, and... I don't know, man. Phasma's whole origin story is
and you get a lot of good Hux
like,
stuff in there, too. Like, if you think Hux is just kind of like a whiny little bitch, then read...
Yeah.
Hux in the EU is pretty brutal.
Yeah, he's cool, man. Like, I don't know. Phasma's really good. I don't know. We don't ever really talk about Phasma. No one ever really talks about Phasma, but I thought Phasma was a very, very good read. And
man, Charles, you can go pick it up on utini.com right now. If you go search for its official book profile, you click the Amazon link, then we get a couple cents. So,
no way.
That's how I'll tell you more about it at the end of the
episode. No, I mean, all self-promotion aside, I really do plan on picking that book up. So, and speaking...
Maybe like next year after we have read all these other hundreds of incredible books that are coming out.
I know. I will get there. But speaking of kind of Archex's transformation, because it wasn't an easy transformation that we saw in this book, and several other characters also shared some very... I'm sorry. I'm laughing at Corey now. Can you pop that beer, bro? Did you get it? All right,
I
good.
got it.
I'm proud of you for it not being a natty light.
It was the face where you're like...
Don't even cut that out. Just leave it in. Just leave it in, Matt.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of characters had difficult transformations in this book, and there was really a focus on the mental and psychological aspects of being involved in conflict. in this book, and that's something that we don't really see a lot about. It's something that really struck me, and it's actually something that Delilah Dawson commented on when she was here on the show. So if you've listened to that interview, you're familiar with the fact that this was intentional. But really look back and think about this, guys. Since A New Hope, way back when, we've seen Star Wars characters suffer immensely, right?
Yeah.
But when you take a step back, we don't really see them coping with that all that much. Like, Leia literally watches her homeworld just get blown into a million pieces, and the next scene, she's more or less okay. I mean, Luke spends one scene with a blanket wrapped around him because he watched Obi-Wan get struck down, but then he's more or less okay. I mean, but that's not really all that realistic, and it's fine within the movies because there's not time to really dive into that, but we got that a lot in this book. So how did that strike you guys? What did it mean to see that really be addressed?
I thought it was super important.
Yeah, and that's one of the best things about the EU, that you get to see a lot, because there's just time. There's time and pages and paragraphs in which you have the room to sort of tell those stories. And that's what makes the EU so rich, I think, to a lot of us, is just that we have a lot of that behind-the-scenes sort of emotional turmoil. That's why the Revenge of the Sith novelization is so damn good, is because it's just captures that raw emotion better than film does, is because you have the pages to tell the story.
And I think that, culturally, I think we're also going towards a place where trauma and, especially with things like mental health and wellness are kind of being taken a lot more seriously than previously. So the literature seems to be following that a little bit, like Delilah Dawson is acknowledging that we're not in these, 70s, 80s Rambo, like Schwarzenegger, I'm just going to kill a bunch of people and I'll be fine. Like, to take a life takes a lot out of you, and to be hurt physically and mentally will take time to resolve. And I think that a lot of people that have maybe either gone through events like that or know people that have are going to find this book very relatable and probably hard in a lot of ways. But I think that Delilah Dawson was very respectful of the power that has in this book.
Talk about real life a little bit, Charles. I'm sure you can relate to this as well. It's very reflective of the culture we live in right now. Like, there's much more of a push in medicine, to get people into therapy rather than just throwing drugs to them. And my wife is a family counselor. Like, she's a therapist, like, in the real world. So, like, there's a much more valuation of sort of mental health and, like, dealing with psychological trauma, I think, right now than there probably really ever has been. And we're actually throwing money and resources at that to get people into counseling and stuff. So it feels refreshing to me a little bit to see it in Star Wars, even of all things, because, like, it's a very real, raw human emotion. People relate to it, and it's rich, and it's good storytelling.
Yeah, I think that it's really important to normalize a lot of this, and I'm not going to, like, get up on, my bully pulpit here, but, like, seeing it reflected in our favorite stories is very important in real life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
And Delilah Dawson actually did a wonderful job, and this is coming from someone who, I haven't been a doctor that long, but we see a lot of this in family medicine. And Corey, you can attest this as well, but a lot of behavioral medicine, or a lot of behavioral health, or psych, however you want to refer to it, we see a ton of it every day. And she actually represented it very accurately, I felt like, at least the post-traumatic type picture, which most of the characters were going through in one way or another. And I think it's really important. So big props to her for doing that.
Yeah, and I really liked the way she tackled, in addition to the post-traumatic stress disorder stuff, like the anxiety that a lot of them had, like especially Creaky, right? Like the performance anxiety. We touched a little bit on that last episode. But the idea that she lives with anxiety and it halts her from doing her job and things like that. Like, it's all those little touches were really well placed. They didn't take over the story, because I think that could have easily been glaring. Yeah. But again, it just...
Yeah, this wasn't Star Wars mental health.
It was people that were going through things, and I mean, that's why Delilah Dawson's one of the best.
Yes. She's very good at telling. I mean, she talked a lot about that in the episode. I know we keep plugging it, but go back and listen to it. That was my favorite part of that entire episode, is she talks about not making her characters black and white. I mean, she makes them very fluid, and that's how people actually are. Yep. That's why she's a good writer.
And I think sometimes we can read a book or watch a movie or whatever it is, hear a story more or less, and we can not really think about the full impact that certain things have or would have on the characters in real life, right? Like I mentioned Leia and Alderaan and all these things, but even within this book, right? Like Vi Marati was tortured, okay? And now she is hanging out in a cave all alone with the guy who did this to her. Like Dolan had to leave the only home he's ever known and his family, and basically he was excommunicated by his family, by his grandmother, to join this resistance. We had Zayd, whose best friend was murdered in front of his eyes. I mean, these are very, very impactful, traumatic type things.
Sure.
And it seems almost like, oh, but of course we would talk about how these characters were affected by them. But that's not that common. So I think it's I know I'm just saying the same thing again, but I really want to stress this point. Like it was done amazingly well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And one quote I thought that was really great in particular that I just wanted to drop on y'all was actually really early on page 14. And I think it was the Resistance doctor who actually said this. It was, I can heal bones, but I can't heal souls. You have to do that yourself.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one. I remember
It
that.
beautifully set the stage for what was going to be addressed later on.
Yeah,
so
speaking of things that we should address, can we talk about the fact for a second that Princess Leia just dumped Vi into her torturers? Like her assignment is to babysit her torturer. What the hell was up
let's
with that?
talk about that.
That bothered the crap out of me. As soon as it happened initially, I was like, "Wow, this is really glossed over." Like,
yeah, I think the point of that, which I agree, probably bad decision, right? Like, or not that much foresight went into that decision. But I think what it really shows is how bad the Resistance is hurting at this point in time.
How desperate
how
they are.
few personnel there really are. That this was
Right.
maybe a necessity just from a resource standpoint.
I think
That's-
there's a
that's
point of
fair.
that. I think there may be also, again, all conjecture, there may also be an idea of Leia seeing Vi be so eager for new missions, right? Like, at the beginning of the book, she's chomping at the bit. She wants, like, dangerous missions, especially. She wants to go on Star Destroyers. She wants to just do all this stuff, and maybe she has kind of a secret death wish at this point. And maybe Leia realizes that the only way she can actually get out of this behavior is to kind of confront what she went through head on, and and the only way that can happen is by seeing Cardinal again, and by facing Archex and seeing him as a person, because if he can become a person, then maybe she can become a person again at the same time.
so maybe Leia's a genius and not a jackass.
That could
is
be
that
a
what you're
genius
saying?
or jackass, Leia Organa. There's another shirt.
Well, you bring up a great point, and you were talking again about, or Eric, you mentioned this about Archex, seeing that he could become a person again. And I might be going off the deep end here with my next question, but I couldn't help but start thinking about masks when I was reading this book. And it was because of Cardinal, a.k.a. Archex, but, I really kind of let my mind run with it, and I started thinking about all of Star Wars. And I couldn't help but think about the role that masks play, particularly in the Star Wars saga, and what kind of an impact that had on this story. And what I mean by that is I feel like masks have kind of two big roles within Star Wars. The first is people are essentially hiding themselves from the outside world, which is, of course, what a mask is really for. But the second is that I feel like they might be hiding their own actions from themselves. We always see evil in a mask in these stories, or at least typically, right?
I mean, even Palpatine in the prequel trilogy, as Sidious, the hood is always covering at least the eyes.
Yeah.
So there's always...
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of a mask,
100%.
yeah.
100%. And so, there are practical purposes, right? Like you're saying, Sidious didn't want the world to know, or anyone to know, really, that he was also the Supreme Chancellor. But I think they also do have a psychological impact in that the wearer of the mask is probably aware that what they're doing is evil. I'm thinking about Kylo Ren a lot when I'm talking about this. And so they kind of dissociate themselves, right? Like Kylo Ren became Kylo Ren, even though he's Ben Solo, right? Like they dissociate these evil actions from themselves. And, Anakin didn't do those bad things. Vader did those things, right? Archex didn't torture Vi. That was Cardinal. And we actually saw that said in this book. I think Vi thought that exact thought. Like, oh, that was Cardinal. That wasn't Archex. So I know I just threw a lot at you guys, and I might just be off my rocker, but, like, what do you think about what I'm throwing out there?
I think it makes sense, man. I think that there's a lot of excusing horrific actions by people in Star Wars, frankly. I mean, I think that the people whose faces are exposed are kind of thought as even, like, most evil because, like, you know, when Hux destroys Hosnian, he is looking into it barefaced, and that's, like, it's chilling. Whereas Kylo Ren has his mask on. You know, so, like, he can't quite look at it with his eyes, but Hux can. I think that says a lot. I think that in the Clone Wars, especially in the series, as we get to know the clones more, the ones that have their helmets off more are the ones that we really, you know, connect with and that start to be open with each other. And only when they're safe and secure do they take the helmets off to really be vulnerable. And I think that there is a huge distinction between who you are with the mask on and who you are without it. And, I mean, you're totally right, though, Charles. I think Kylo is the biggest example of that, especially in the sequel trilogy. Going from Episode 7, having it on most of the time, to Episode 8, destroying it, to now what we're seeing in Episode 9, having it being, you know, reformed, essentially. Is that his last attempt to harness himself? Is that his last attempt to put this mask on because he's afraid Ben Solo will come out, you know? And I think Cardinal did that pretty perfectly. Yet, at the end, you know, redonning the armor was an interesting choice because then he flips the narrative. Because Archex comes out of the armor even though he's wearing it. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, something you said, Charles, that stood out to me is you said the mask often hides the evil. I think something interesting in Star Wars, too, is we often see the reverse of that, too. And the mask coming off is also a very symbolic kind of, you're taking the evil away. Like, you know, I'm thinking back to Return of the Jedi. They take Darth Vader's helmet off for the first time, and Luke looks into his father's eyes, and that's very symbolic of, like, you know, this is you know, shedding this evil helmet, shedding his evil that he's had, like, and the good is underneath. And we see that a lot too, which Kylo Ren is again an excellent example of that, because I mean, I'm kind of on the Ben Demption train a little bit. Like, I think he's going to be redeemed in some way, so maybe the mask is covering the evil somehow. So it was very apparent in this book too, and I thought that was a great little scene right at the end that you referenced there, Eric, about, like, there's a scene at the very end of the book, if you haven't read it, where Archex, like, shows up into the big climactic battle, and he's wearing his armor again, and then he takes his helmet off, and it's like it's him underneath, and now he's on the good guy's side, right? He's not with the First Order anymore, even though he's wearing the First Order armor, and it's very symbolic of him casting away this past life he had. So
I think it's interesting. Another thing that you just made me think of, Corey, is taking off that mask and seeing the person underneath, I think, is also kind of a lesson in and of itself too, right? Because we as an audience, we look at Vader, and probably, you know, when people first saw Episode 4, they could even have thought of him as, like, a machine, right? Like, as a droid. But I think it's important to actually see the face under the mask. Think about how impactful it was to actually see Phasma's eye when her mask was broken, right?
That's another great example.
Like, it lets you remember that there is humanity here. Like, this is another person who has made these decisions, and there's something inherently very disturbing about that, but also something that we can understand even just from looking at the world around us.
And I mean, and not to belabor the point even further, because I agree with everything you're saying, but then you get the Anakin Ahsoka moment in Rebels. I mean, that mask shedding and seeing the two of them literally in audio form with James Earl Jones and Matt Lanter, like, combining vocal tracks to kind of show that. So
totally,
man. I feel like this just turned into, like, a Sky Talkers episode.
Exactly.
Where
I was about to say,
talking about masks.
Sky Talkers, if you guys have never listened to Sky Talkers, they often pick themes and really break things down, and this sounds like you hear the themes sometimes, at least I do, and I'm like, how is this going to be a 2-hour episode? Like, I don't get this at all, but then it's, like, super deep analysis, and it always blows me away. Those girls are really bright over there, but yeah, I think masks are super important in Star Wars, and it's very symbolic of a lot of stuff that continues to happen in everything that we see, so it's done really well in this book too.
Okay, well, I'm glad to know that was not just a crazy late night rant that I had, but it makes sense. Okay, well, moving on from that, I want to spend a little bit of time. We talked about a lot of the main characters in this book. I want to talk about some of the background characters that really stood out to me. And in particular, I'm talking about savvy scrappers. Okay, so the people that Vi worked with for at least a portion of this novel. And the reason they stood out to me is they had a shocking amount of insight into the Force. And I have a whole bunch of evidence here. I took notes, and I didn't include this in y'all's handout, but I can bring them up as we go. I mean, it was jarring. I was like, how do these people who are the blue-collar workers on this world that they repeatedly tell me is not important and is out on the edge of the universe, how do they have this intimate knowledge of the Force? And why do you think that they did? And regardless of your reason, do you think that that was believable by Star Wars standards?
Yeah, man. Well, doesn't Sav, or not Sav, is it Elena? Who's her best friend?
Elena is...
Yeah, does that sound right?
Was Vi's good friend.
Elena.
Yeah, like the head scrapper.
Yeah, she mentions that Savi, like, sees when people have the aura about them, right? There's something about that, like, so we trust people. And I think that there's something with the way the Force works that maybe there's a lot of people that have gotten rejected from working at Savi's that don't have this Force aura around them. And, you know, maybe just by listening to the Force and bringing people in, like, Savi is being kind of, like, very Jedi there. He's just listening to the will of the Force and obeying it. So maybe that's just gathering those people naturally.
Maybe Savi is like a secret follower of the religion, like that the guy at the beginning of Force Awakens.
Lor Santeca. Yeah, well, they're friends, aren't they?
He was friends with Lor Santeca.
Yeah, okay. So maybe Savi is a follower of like what do they call that? It's like the or something like that. Yeah, it's some kind of it's kind of religion, kind of. Yeah. I don't know if religion's the right word for that, but like
they're followers of the religion, because the Jedi is technically a religion. But yeah, like Luke literally calls it a religion innate.
Luke calls it the Jedi religion. So I think that they're probably just followers of the religion that can't tap into Force powers, but they still acknowledge what it is. Yeah. How it's all connected and stuff. And so I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but did it it didn't actually totally reveal like Savi's motives in that?
No, not really.
It didn't. But there were some interesting quotes. So you brought it up. Let me just read you guys 3 quotes that I have. Okay. The first one was on page 84, and I'm actually not going to quote it, but essentially Elena mentions that they're looking for holocrons in the scrapyard. So, like, does the average person, especially on the edge of known space, know about holocrons? And like,
no way.
Savi
does, and that's what's interesting to me.
Sure, because I think
Savi
one of the 3 shops on the planet is an ancient antiquities shop, so maybe.
Yes. Trading Force artifacts is not a new concept. In fact, in the Bane trilogy, which I finished not that long ago in the audiobook form, like, do you guys remember that in the Bane trilogy when Darth Bane is like, he's like secretly collecting all these Sith artifacts and stuff, and there's a huge underworld like culture trading of like so he pretends to not be a Sith. Obviously, he approaches the whole like black market of these goods like he's just like a super interested weirdo like collector of this stuff, right? So that's not a new concept. It's like there's this underworld culture
and
of
then
this,
that we have both the gangs in Aftermath that are getting lightsabers and stuff, and then in the interludes, and then we have that I forgot her name, the master in Dooku Jedi Lost,
Kastana.
Kastana.
I think it's probably a continuation of that, and maybe this is kind of a secret hub for that stuff.
Okay, well
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say here's my next. This one is probably what struck me the most. Was on page 177 when Vi finds kyber crystals literally in a water canteen. Okay, so Matt, prepare the droid, because why the are kyber crystals in a canteen on Batuu? Like, it's not even like this is like a scrapyard on Coruscant and they found their way. You know what I mean? Like the only people that go to Batuu are these like smugglers and traders, and they're not tossing kyber crystals in a canteen and then tossing it in the scrapyard. Like, how?
It doesn't. It's implied in a lot of ways, I think, that they're not like sorting junk to make a profit and then to casually, like, on the side, find a bunch of Jedi artifacts. Like, it's phrased the opposite. It's phrased, like, and set up as if the whole point of Savi's scrapyard is to find Jedi artifacts and then make some money on the side of that. Yeah. And, like, that's a great question. How the hell are there so many Jedi artifacts? Like, they find robes in this book. They find, like They find don't they find like a chest full of like Jedi robes? Right?
There's also like how many of them working for 8-9 hours a day continuously. So I think laws.
Yeah, but this is like
think about where
this is like
this is in the
Tatooine, though.
timeline.
This is like this is the
and that's what
desert
I'm
of Mos
wondering
Eisley.
Is there anything to, you mentioned kyber crystals being in a canteen, right? Is there anything to people like Loris Anteca and people that are essentially followers of the Jedi religion, or at least believe the stories of the Jedi as the Empire was crushing it all down, that would try to like hide stuff? Like in Nazi Germany, a lot of Jewish people would hide their jewelry in like random places. So I wonder if that's kind of an inspiration of like the Empire's coming to our planet. We can't destroy this stuff, so I'm gonna hide it in a thing and like put it on a freighter so that at least it'll live on.
And maybe Savi is kind of like a funnel too. Like maybe all of his connections, like it's kind of like all of his connections are constantly trying to send him junk, that happens to have a bunch of Jedi stuff in it. So like maybe that's the purpose. That's what his side business kind of is. He's sort of a central player a little bit in that.
Like I'm gonna go to a Jedi temple and maybe I'll find something, but in order to get it off planet, I have to put it in a canteen, or I have to smuggle it in something else. So it'll get to Batuu.
Maybe so.
But I have to get it through Imperial space, or even New Republic space, frankly.
Something of that nature.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the last quote that I want to bring up, or the last, point in the book, was from page 282. And it really stood out to me because it was the gatherers themselves, which is what these scrappers were called. They really seem to feel like they have a role to play in how everything is unfolding in the galaxy as well. And there's a quote that says, "I strongly feel that we are meant to play a greater role in this conflict between the Resistance and the First Order. Why else do we collect the artifacts and ancient weapons? Why else do we learn all that we can from the legacy of the Jedi and Sith, if not to use it, as they would, to protect the balance?" So it's interesting for a lot of reasons, right? But not the least of which, they're referencing literally the balance of the Force, which has been such an idea in the sequel trilogy. I just find it very interesting that it's coming from the gatherers.
Yeah. I mean, maybe there's something to being around someone like Savi even kind of affects the way you think, and also being around objects that are imbued with that type of power all day, or that you are actually seeing evidence of this, every other day, once a week, whatever it may be. At some point, it's got to stick, right?
I suppose so. It must have, because look at what we're seeing. And kind of to piggyback off of that, I thought it was really interesting. Not just the gatherers, not just the scrappers, but just normal people on Batuu, they were saying, "May the Force be with you." Like just normal folk, right? Like, why do they know that phrase? They're not even members of the Church of the Force.
Maybe they are. Maybe Savi is like an underworld cult leader, and there's like a giant church following on Batuu.
I think there's definitely there could be underground groups and tales. I mean, it's myths and fables, man. It's these people have been telling these bedtime stories on Batuu, and maybe every once in a while that phrase gets littered into this story, and then this children's story, and then but wasn't that found on that piece of flimsy or whatever we found? Like, I think they could piece it together, and then it becomes kind of a legend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's the only plausible explanation. It is kind of odd. I thought so too, that it was kind of weird that both what you said earlier about all this junk and random Jedi artifacts ending up on Batuu, and then that they all know the phrase. It's definitely weird. I thought it was definitely weird.
I'm gonna have to go to Disney World and investigate.
Yeah. I thought that May the Spires Keep You was kind of going to be the local version of May the Force Be With You, but they started using that too, so I thought that was interesting. All right, so I want to talk about a couple of more big ideas before we jump into the Easter eggs and all of that kind of stuff, and I want to give us a little bit more time for those so that y'all can comment on them a bit more than maybe we have in the past. But let's talk about Archex's sacrifice, because it was really what this entire book was leading up to. So if you are listening to this and you haven't read the book, just to clue you in, Archex essentially gives himself up to save the rest of the members of his little resistance band. He allows himself to be captured by Kath and the rest of the First Order, and he gets on their ship knowing that it is going to explode and knowing that he is going to die. So what did you two think of Archex's sacrifice? Did you feel like it was necessary for him to get on that ship, or was it purely for Vi and the Resistance, or was he also using it as an opportunity to escape from a life that he didn't want to live anymore? What are your thoughts on all of that?
I think it's the perfect end to his character arc, honestly. I don't think there's an element of, I get to get away from the Resistance at the last second. Like, I think that would kind of cheapen it in a way. I think that there's definitely I know what I have to do, and there's kind of a zen peace, because this whole book is kind of about getting peace at a certain point for him, I think, and like kind of, you've done so many horrors in your life, how do you reconcile that? How do you get back to even, as it were, and kind of just be at peace with your own self? And I think that's eventually where he got to, and I think that Vi recognized that pretty instantly. So I think that's basically how she gets to do it, is realize. I think that's why she didn't try to stop or make a scene, because that's basically how it goes.
Yeah, I thought that the Cardinals Inn was pretty fitting. It didn't feel forced to me at all either. Like, I mean, I don't know. It didn't feel like it was an entirely planned sort of thing. Like, it felt like this is like, I didn't feel like he showed up to that battle knowing he was going to have to do this. Like, it really felt like the opportunity presented himself for him to save his friends, and he took it, and it worked out nicely.
I agree with that. And y'all don't have to go in depth on this, but did you feel though that he wanted to die? Because I got that impression personally.
Maybe a little bit. I mean, he definitely just did not feel like his purpose was ever truly with the Resistance. I don't think. Like, or maybe if he thought, I don't know. He seemed just, his entire world just got turned upside down. He realized he was on the wrong side. I mean, and it was just as clear as that. And he wasn't as useful to the Resistance as he was with the First Order, because everything he's been trained to know and love is just different.
I guess I feel like in a way it was a little bit like Luke. It's like there wasn't sadness or fear. There was just peace and purpose. Like I don't think, I don't think Luke went into the end of Episode 8 like, this is gonna be it for me, like intentionally necessarily. But when it happened, it was like, yep, I did it. I saved everyone, and now this is my next chapter. So I think that's kind of how I saw it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a very good way to put it.
That makes sense. All right. Well, moving on from that, we essentially learned that Archex's sacrifice meant that the First Order was supposedly ousted from Batuu. They were not going to have a presence there anymore. But in the epilogue, we find that actually they're coming back stronger than ever, because Wolfgar Kath is being replaced with none other than Kylo Ren, which is why he's present in the park when you go to visit Galaxy's Edge. That's the time period that you're visiting during, is after the events of this book. How do you guys feel about Kylo Ren coming to Batuu, and do you think we'll ever get that story, or is that something that's just going to play out in the park?
We've talked a lot about like sort of our initial reactions. We found out that this book was a Galaxy's Edge labeled book, and like there were a few subtle moments where I was like, all right, this is park advertising. And to me, I don't know how you feel, Eric, but this is the only place in this entire book where I was just like, this is like a blatant park advertisement. Like, to me, it felt like it.
I agree, and I didn't want. The thing is, like, I usually like the epilogues are so good most of the time. Like they really make you want to go to the next book, and this is the only time where I was like, oh, I was just kind of dealing with the emotional end of this book. So I think it ended really strong. There was a lot of purpose in it, and then it's like, it didn't really matter anyway. Kylo's coming, and I'm like, well, shit. Like
it's very eye-rolling.
And I guess I didn't. To me. I don't even know if I necessarily went to, oh, this is because of he needs to be in the park. But again, that totally doesn't.
I didn't
make
go
sense.
to that. Right. Yeah. Isn't there, what's the ride called? Like Rise of the Resistance or something,
Rise
right?
of the Resistance,
what's it called? Is that what it's called? Yeah, okay. So this feels like what you ever been in like a Universal Studios or something where like you ride a ride and it's got like a video you watch to like get you in the mood and set the theme up and everything. It's like, here's the Hulk and all this stuff, and now you ride the ride and it fits the theme. Kind of like that kind of thing. Like this played in my head like that.
Yeah.
Like this is the setup right before. This is the video that you see right before you get on the ride of like. It was just so cliche. Like it was like, who is she talking to? Like she's talking to somebody in the Resistance.
Yeah,
it was really
I didn't
rushed.
love it.
It was just like. Yeah.
Yep.
Not a
Wish
fan.
I would.
My first like real open criticism of this book is that felt kind of dumb and forced. I mean, to me,
It struck me less. I'm interested to hear y'all say that. It struck me less than reading the names of food and drink that you can literally order in the park. Like it
Yes.
felt less egregious to me than that.
Yes,
that's
that's
fair.
true.
And I
There are,
don't think, just to be clear, I don't think that the epilogue, even if you did take it as a park advertisement straight up, like it didn't take away from how good the rest of the book was.
I don't know.
I don't
It
think.
did. It did to me a little bit.
Okay.
I mean, just because it felt so, it made it seem like everything was unimportant. Like, okay, so Vi has just now gotten some like following going. They have a couple
right.
X-wings, I think now, right? And like
Yeah.
there's like a small little base on Batu, and then she gets this hurried message from maybe Poe. I mean, who did you guys think it was? You think
Maybe.
it was Poe?
I don't remember.
Maybe Poe is just like, hey, you better get out of there. Kylo Ren's on his way. And then she goes outside and she sees him coming down like, she's screwed. There's a Star Destroyer.
Yeah,
like, there's no way they're going to get out of that. Like, she seems so screwed.
it honestly
So-
made me. Usually, the epilogue, like in other books, will make me just really close the cover and be like, "Oh man, that was a lot."
melancholy.
Yeah.
Like, you feel
This
warm
one, I
and
was
fuzzy
like,
inside,
"Well, the book was still
like,
good."
oh,
And
wow.
I closed it without really feeling
Yeah,
anything, which was weird.
Well, I think it's interesting because they can't really progress the story if they leave the situation the same in the park, right?
Yes,
and
exactly.
if you go there, you want to see Kylo Ren. You want to see Rey. Actually, Rey is there, so we know that Rey has to make her way to Batu at some point.
Here's my most controversial opinion on this. Maybe I don't give a shit about the canon of the park. Okay, here's the thing. I appreciate
agree.
what they're trying to do,
No.
but I feel like we're working too hard to make sure that the canon nuts are like, well, why is the Falcon here when who gives a shit about that part? I'm sorry, I don't care.
Because you can walk in there and get on the Falcon, and that's
which
amazing.
is perfect.
That's
which
that's
is
right.
perfect.
I explain this all the time. Somebody asked me today, I shit you not, this happened. One of my coworkers today asked me, we had some spare time. They're like, "What do you think about the whole hyperspace scene in The Last Jedi?" I'm sure you guys all get these questions all the flipping time about random controversies
some
in
today.
The Last Jedi. Okay. So like, yes, exactly. We talked about this earlier. So you're like, I got this question. What do you think about that scene? I'm just like, I don't give a shit. It was cool. It looked really cool, and it was really fun to watch in the theater because everybody gasped, and it was silent. That was awesome. I'm like, listen, if you are into the books and comics, you can't actually care that much about canon continuity because if you're all old school Legends stuff, there is no such thing as truly beautiful canon continuity. There's plenty of flaws everywhere, all through canon. It's like, I don't give a shit about any of that. The fact that I'm so into the expanded universe is almost proof that I don't care
you know
about
what's
that kind of
not
stuff.
canon.
I'm just here for the
in
entertainment,
Batu?
man.
Me. Like, I'm walking in it, and therefore am now in canon. So, like,
That's
I wish they would. So,
Oh my God, I
again,
love it.
I do applaud them ideologically for trying to do that, but realistically,
Yes.
you don't have to work that hard.
Do we know? Hold on a second. Do we know for a fact
We don't
that
know
that's
for a
why
fact,
they
but
did
it seems
Or
like
is
because
this
Batu had
That's my assumption.
Galaxy's
yeah.
Edge has been established to exist.
I thought it was just to set up the
Maybe.
ride, is what I felt like. I thought it was to set up the ride because the ride involves
Yeah.
Kylo Ren and Batu and
But
the
like he
Resistance.
walks
I thought it
around
was-
the park and is like actively looking for
Yes.
Vimerati. You know what
For
I
the
mean?
spy and the girl Rey.
So
So I
maybe.
think there has to be a reason for them all to be on Batu between episodes 8 and 9. So overall,
Yeah. I think
fine.
the real question is,
Fair
does
enough.
it ruin your experience when
not
you ask
ruin.
these questions? And it shouldn't.
no,
It shouldn't.
no.
No. If if questioning continuity ruins the experience, then
What are we
man, you're in
doing
for a
here?
hard
Yeah,
ride.
no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, like pick up. There's you can buy these now. I think you can get them in the. I think there are Marvel Epic collections of the Infinities series.
Yeah,
You guys heard of the Infinities? Okay, so the Infinities series are like Dark Horse and Marvel Comics that were maybe not Dark Horse, or are they Dark Horse? I think they are Dark Horse and Marvel Comics that are like blatantly not canon. Like even in Legends continuity, blatantly not canon. Like really ridiculous stuff that doesn't make any sense. Like there's a really old comic I think where like Han and Chewie like crash land the landing
Yep, and then
Falcon on
Indiana Jones
Earth.
finds it. Yeah, like
Yeah,
it's fun.
Like, come on,
at
like
the
it's
end of the day,
ridiculous.
was this my favorite epilogue? No. Did it ruin the book for me? Absolutely not.
Guys, at
No,
the end of the day, I'm going to leave it at this. E.T. is in the Senate. Okay?
You're right.
E.T. is in the Senate.
I can't
There
argue
it
with
is.
that. I can't argue with
Okay,
that.
let's hop into Easter eggs. Let's go ahead and run through these. I'll run through them as fast as y'all are ready, but if you want to talk about any certain point, then
Hit me.
let's go for it. So, first thing, page 19. Are we officially calling what happened in The Force Awakens the Hosnian Cataclysm?
Yep.
Because
Oh,
that
yeah,
flew under
I
my
meant to
radar
bring that up with
until
you
this
guys.
book.
Yep.
Yeah, is that
I
that's
think
the official name?
this made it. Yes, this made it. This made
I
that canon.
believe
I think.
so.
Yeah, I had not seen it elsewhere.
Yeah, me either.
Okay.
Which is okay.
I like it
That's
just
an okay
fine.
name. I like it.
No, I like it.
know.
I like it.
What is the destruction of Alderaan called?
I think it's just the destruction of Alderaan.
I don't know. The destruction of Alderaan.
Yeah, because I've been trying. I come across this like I'm trying to say like as if it has a name like the Hosnian
maybe
Cataclysm. I
there
come
was a
across
lot
this
more-
often, and I end up just stumbling around and then saying something like, the destruction of Alderaan.
I think
Like,
that's what
Yeah,
it's
because
called.
there was also
Yeah.
a lot more propaganda around Alderaan to make it seem like it wasn't a thing, whereas the Hosnian Cataclysm is like, yup, it happened.
Yeah.
yeah, that's true.
Okay. On page 24, the quote is, "The resistance is built on hope." That has got to be a reference to Jin's line in Rogue
100%.
One. So that was
yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
Page 48, pod racing is once again mentioned, and I'm taking it as a sign that Disney is listening to me. Del Rey is listening to me, and I am getting a pod racing book sometime
on!
soon. Damn it!
That would be so sick. I would love to see a pod race,
I'm-
or even it doesn't even have to be pod race. It could be swoop bikes too, like
Yeah,
from KOTOR.
sure.
I'd be fine with any.
I
sort
mean,
of
I
racing.
want pod
mean,
racing.
Okay, we were talking about this earlier. I mean, Resistance is kind of racy, but it's really weak. So
Yeah.
give us a pod race with.
Oh my god,
with
guys,
same
imagine
people
pod
than
racing, but
RC.
like with the Galaxy Adventures anime style.
Oh, it'd be
it'd
so
be sick.
cool.
Do it.
Yeah, that would be sick.
God, they should just hire us
We're
for
so
ideas.
good.
Okay. Page 53, I have to bring up a couple of Oga's Cantina rules. No Kowakian monkey lizards, and no ripping off limbs. I thought that was amazing.
Yeah, none of that.
Oh my god. Yeah,
That was
for the audience, that
kind
was
of
actually
impressive.
Eric in real time. That was not a soundboard.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh
guys.
man. Okay. Page 61, we already brought this up, but it was in my list here. Savvy was good friends with Lor Santeca, and I think that's really interesting, and we kind of fleshed out why that's important
Yeah.
already. So
And
we
if you
can
love
move
Laura
right on from that.
Santeca, he does make an appearance in the Poe Dameron comic. So much.
Yeah. Oh, a great
That's like a
appearance.
that's like a significant part of the plot.
It's very
Get in there.
important. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Very good.
Page 85, the quote is, "You're no good to us dehydrated," and I couldn't help but hear Boba Fett's "He's no good to me dead" when I read that.
As you
Drink
wish.
your water.
It might have been a stretch. Yeah, it might have been a stretch, but it really got me. Page 87, a Zexto is mentioned, and that is the same species as, yes, the pod racer Gazgano in The Phantom Menace. I think it's the first time we've really seen him.
Which one is that in the Phantom Menace?
Gazgano, he's the really like pale white, like thin dude with a bunch
Oh
of
yeah.
arms.
With the he has the droids, right?
He got
Is that
4
him
arms.
with the
Are you talking about the
that- am I thinking
droid,
of-
the pit droids that have all the
Yeah.
Three Stooges
No,
type
that's not
stuff? That's
him.
Quadraneros, I think,
okay.
isn't it?
I'm so impressed you
You
remember all
filthy
these
casual,
names, Charles.
Corey.
I love the pod race, guys.
Seriously.
I'm not kidding. I played the crap out of the game back in the day. I love it.
That's a
I
live
love it.
stream we
All
need
right.
to do.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yes.
god,
Oh my
let's
God.
do it. I've got a 64 and pod racer. I'm down.
I also have a 64. I don't think I have Pod Racer. Have you guys played an old 64 game in like the last 10 years?
Yes.
Because it doesn't live up. It doesn't.
it's all
not the same.
nostalgia. It's all nostalgia.
Yeah. It's like
all
God,
right.
these graphics are trash.
Well, it was 1996. Page 151, and Ebonhawk is mentioned.
Yes.
But
yeah.
the actual species.
Yeah, I think we talked about that in the first episode.
Yeah, I think
that
we
was
did
cool.
bring that
KOTOR
up.
love.
Yeah. Page.
Delilah Dawson continually showing how much she knows about Star Wars.
Oh yeah.
Like
oh yeah.
that's not a reference that you get out of just scrolling Wikipedia. She had to have played KOTOR a couple times to do
Well,
that.
especially because it was she actually like referenced an Ebonhawk, like the species, not even the ship. Right?
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Page 165. Vi's trip into the ruins. It felt like Indiana Jones, like
thank you!
100%,
Yeah.
or Dr. Aphra
Yes.
if you're trying to be more Star Wars centric. And then on page 165, she actually says the quote, "I'm an errand girl, not an archaeologist." And I was like, this is so
Yes.
in your face. I love it.
I was really waiting for a like grab the idol and replace it with a bag
Yes!
of sand moment.
Oh,
I was really
And
excited.
the big
I was
boulder
really
starts.
That'd have been great.
Yes, I was hoping that was
Well, because
going
we
to
get
happen.
the boulder
so
moment in
bad.
Force
like,
Awakens when Han's running from the Wrath Star.
Yes.
Which is awesome.
Yes,
True.
exactly.
Yeah. Page 172, a convor is mentioned. That was the pet bird of Master Lean Castana from
Oh,
Dooku
yeah.
Jedi Lost.
Oh wow,
nice.
that's impressive. I can't believe that one.
Yeah. 174, is it new knowledge, this is my question, that Lord Santeca helped Luke disappear and go to Octo? Because there's a quote that said, "But Lore knew him," speaking of Luke, "helped him find a place far off the beaten path. You could say he helped Luke leave because he believed it was the right choice."
I think it's
Whoa, I
That's
did
a
not
lot.
even consider that. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
technically new. Like, he did have the file with the final part of the map. So I think that we
He
can
did.
infer that he knew, but I think that's the most blatant it's ever been. For sure.
Yeah. I mean,
But
it was just
not
kind of
even
dropped
just that-
casually, but like that's a big
Yeah,
thing.
not that. Yeah, not just that he knew, but like he
Yeah.
actually helped Luke
Yeah.
go there.
that's a great point.
That's pretty interesting.
Which then has ramifications on Savi,
Yeah.
too, right? Because Savi's friends with Lord Santeca. Okay, awesome. Page 182, I could not help but point this out to you guys. The quote is, "As if I couldn't beat the actual crap out of you in a fight." Cringe.
Cringe, hard cringe.
What in the world was that? And why are characters saying that?
There are a couple moments in this book that I felt like were like that, and I'm just like, I mean, some of that is Lila Dawson's writing style, and she just does that sometimes.
Yeah.
But
That one got
was
me, though.
cringy,
That one
right.
really got me.
it did. I think that is the most openly cringy moment in this
Yeah.
entire book.
It
Maybe in most of Star Wars canon. To
But
be
also,
honest.
it was funny.
Yeah.
But it was just like,
It was funny. She's a spy, Charles. All right,
I know,
just trust her.
I know. The best
She's
spy in the
the-
Resistance. I know.
Yes.
But another joke that Dawson had that was fantastic was on page 196 when they named the cave worm that attacked Archex after Hux. They named it like the Hux cave worm or something. I can't remember exactly, but I thought that was
Yes,
fantastic.
Amazing.
that
Absolutely.
was hilarious. Yeah, that was great.
Page 240, there's a quote that says, "Vi learned that Kylo Ren would look favorably on any scouting party that returned with Jedi or Sith artifacts." So maybe that's how he came to own Vader's helmet. I don't know. Apparently he had just a call out for any of these type of artifacts, which is another callback
Yeah.
to Bane as well, like you brought up earlier, Corey.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah.
cool.
How the hell did he get that helmet? I wonder if that's ever going to be explained. Because
I don't know.
damn, the helmet. Let's see. It would have been who had the
It was
body?
burned. It was burned on Endor.
Yeah,
Or the Forest
But,
Moon
like,
of Endor. Yeah.
yeah, but obviously the helmet didn't burn. Like he's getting this metal
but
suit.
the-
like,
the
so
helmet was
who was
on him, though.
responsible for
Yeah.
going to clean?
Yeah, the helmet was
Yeah, but-
on the pyre.
I know, but who was responsible for going to clean up the leftovers?
An
from the
Ewok
dead
that wanted to
body?
make a
Like,
quick buck on the black market.
Yeah, Logray? I don't know. What is the answer to that?
Was it? God damn it,
burning
Logray!
questions.
Wicket. It was Wicket.
I like the idea of Logray
Yes.
just looting bodies.
I mean, have you guys played the Ewok hunt on Star Wars Battlefront 2?
Yeah.
It is
Dude, there's a new
terrifying.
update coming out. You hear about that? They're
I
adding a
have
new
not.
map for it on Endor for Halloween.
Not on Endor?
I think it's still on Endor, but
Or
it's
not
like,
on the
it's,
Forest
it's
Moon?
like slightly different than it was last year.
Gotcha. Okay, I love playing that game mode late at night after a couple of
If
beers.
we can
with my
ever
friends.
figure out how to live stream gameplay on Patreon, we will absolutely do some drunk Ewok
Yes.
hunt on Patreon.
No, I'm telling you, it is
It's
so
so
fun.
scary.
Two of my friends, they got Battlefront because I pestered them. They're not Star Wars fans at all, and we play that late at night sometimes, and their screams coming through the mic as they're being chased by Ewoks, and they yell Wisties because they know about the Wisty
Yep,
pouches.
we'll do it.
It makes my life. It makes my life.
maybe that'll be one of our
what I'm
Patreon
saying.
like goals.
I love it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Make
we're
it to
we're
$200
winding down
and
here,
we'll-
but page 282, Yelena is talking to Savvy about helping Vi fight the First Order, and she says, and I quote, "Can't we give her one of the?" And she stops, And Savvy responds, "No, just as we follow the Force but cannot access it, so is she bound by her limitations. The only weapons she'll bring to this fight are those she discovered on her own." So are we implying that Savvy has lightsabers just on deck?
Yeah, man.
Maybe could be
That's
lightsabers.
awesome.
Could be.
It's got to be
I know,
lightsabers.
yeah.
And what,
Could also-
these have? What are
Could
they
it-
going to be used
Could it
for?
maybe be
Oh,
holocrons?
no, it's
Could it be
weapons, straight
holocrons
up.
Also,
Well, he says weapons.
okay,
Yeah.
all right.
I mean,
All right,
is
fair
this
enough.
maybe? Does Nate get one in Force
Oh,
Collector? Maybe that's
Do you
how
know
he
that we
might come
found out
across
that
one?
Nate is not the Force Collector?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. We talked that. That was
At-
confirmed.
It was
Comic-Con
confirmed by
this
someone
week?
on the storyboard.
Yeah.
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 Which is just wild because it makes that character so
Who the hell
random.
is Nate?
So
That's a Crash of
random.
Fate, by the way.
I
all
know.
listeners, if you're confused.
Yeah, true. Okay, page 294. Leia actually says, "Never tell me the odds."
I love that. I love
Amazing.
That's true.
Page 296, Yogan fruit is mentioned, and actually it was mentioned several times throughout the book, but I believe this was the first time, and that's something that we saw for the first time in Star Wars Rebels.
That was a great episode. It was so stupid, but it was so funny. like the stormtrooper like getting knocked off the ship because Ezra like threw the fruit at him. Made
so
me laugh
good.
really hard.
At one point, a piece of fruit blocks a blaster bolt in Rebels.
Yes, it does. But everybody's really open about it.
I know.
It's like how am I being defeated by fruit right
It's
now?
love
Like,
that
it was
show.
so
It's
funny.
fine.
It was done.
They were defeated by rocks on the Forest Moon, right? So
That's
why
true.
not a berry?
Yes.
So page 326, blue milk mentioned. Of course, we know it's in Oga's cantina at Galaxy's Edge, but it's a great callback. Page 336, Kath says, "You're nothing" to Archex. That's a total reference to TLJ when
Yes,
Kylo
it is.
said it to
Is that what
Rey.
they go through in First Order training?
totally.
Like, for your enemies, just tell them they're nothing.
Must be. Speak it into existence and we can't lose.
Yes, that's right.
So I have this here. I don't even have this on a page number, but my next point is that very late in the book, I realized that Kath is like Kathhound from KOTOR.
Whoa!
Did y'all realize
Holy
this?
crap.
Wolfgar Kath.
No,
Dude,
I'd never
100%.
realized
Like
that.
the Kath
The
Hound.
cat.
Yeah.
Well
Wow.
done.
How cool
yeah,
is
I remember that? On
Yeah.
Dantooine?
Yeah.
Right? Is that
Yeah,
Planet
I
that
think
was
it
on?
Wow,
was.
yeah, it
On
is.
So I thought that was
yeah.
awesome.
Because there's the red ones that were
Page
harder.
351. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Page
Those are the bull
351,
cat
there
hounds
is
or
a
something.
quote that says, "Sometimes it's better to keep looking up for a while." And that's what Zayd said. And then he said, "We'll come back tomorrow and look down again." Now, this felt to me like the exact opposite of what Jin said in Rogue One about it's not a problem if
Yeah.
you don't look up. And so I thought
totally
that was
had
really
those vibes.
nice.
Tons of Rogue One love in this book.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, and last one. Zayd is apparently from Tatooine, which first of all is amazing. Second of all, he went into pubs disguised as a Jawa, which is even better. And finally, he would yell Utini to sell his disguise. And if we had interviewed Delilah Dawson before the release of this book, I would swear that was a shout out to us. But in my own headcanon, I'm still going to just assume that is a shout out to Utini and to the Living Force, and I loved it.
Yes.
And that is the most hilarious background that I would have ever
We love you,
expected.
Delilah.
Yes. I almost took a picture of that and sent it to you guys because I was like,
It's
this
so
is
good.
this is amazing.
It was.
Like,
It really was.
Yes.
But that does it, y'all. That does it for the Easter eggs that I caught when I was reading this. That does it for the entire Black Spire Roundtable. Thank y'all for participating, as always, for reading this book. It's been a lot of fun discussing it. And thanks to everyone who's listening and maybe reading along as well.
All right. So, last thing. Before we go to this outro, I'm going to do what Charles forgot and say our final ratings.
Oh my God, I
We're
forgot
gonna
the
see if
final
they
ratings.
changed.
I was too excited by you.
I
Tim.
know, man. Well, I'll start us off. I'm going to say I'm going to stick right with my 8.5. I really like this book. It's super solid. Delilah Dawson is a rock star, and I do think we're going to get like an unofficial third trilogy book, and I'll be there day one.
Yeah.
absolutely. I'm the same. I think I gave it an 8 initially. I think I'm going to jump it up to an 8.5 also because, like, I think this book is going to be, like, it had its cringy moments. It had its goofy things about, you know, like being the best spy and the resistance was kind of goofy and, like, there's some cringy lines and stuff. But I think overall, I think this book is going to be remembered fondly. And, like, hearing Charles talk through all the Easter eggs. I mean, Delilah Dawson knows her stuff,
awesome.
man. Like,
Oh, yeah.
like Well, there are so many superstar writers, and Delilah is one of those that just knows Star Wars in and out really, really well. She completely deserves to be here the way that Timothy Zahn and Claudia Gray do, and I welcome anything that she writes. Like, she's
100%.
an excellent writer, and I really enjoyed this book, and it fits in nicely with everything we know and love about Star Wars. A lot of really important themes in there. Her character development is really, really good.
Yeah.
Her dive into mental health was awesome for me. I really enjoyed that aspect of the book, and I enjoyed it. I've enjoyed talking about it, I think, more so than most of the other books that we've had roundtables on in the last
Right there with
6
you.
months.
Charles?
So.
Yeah. I agree with everything y'all said, so I'll keep it short. That I think it is very telling that I'm lowballing this book by sticking with my 8 out of 10.
All right, we almost had our first
Yeah.
trifecta, but maybe the next one. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, our next one is probably gonna be Resistance Reborn. Yeah.
Unless we have a super brief thing on Spark of the Resistance.
Yeah,
It's so
we
short.
might have
I don't know.
in the coming month. We might have a little brief talk about Spark of the Resistance. Maybe we might touch on Skywalker Saga, Dooku Jedi Lost. The script book came out, so
Yes.
less official roundtables for those. But keep your eyes or your ears peeled, I guess, for our thoughts on those.
Or eyes,
Ooh,
if it's video content by then.
True.
Yeah. Really quick, just to plug a couple of things. We don't normally do this, but there's so much big stuff coming down the line that I think we should do it. Just in case you missed it, Dooku Jedi Lost came out on hardback last week. Charles has got it on a shelf behind him. Eric and I both got them as well this week. Man, the cover is absolutely gorgeous.
The
Even
back.
more gorgeous. Yes, it's so sick. There's this beautiful like Empire Jedi logo. It's so sick. The blue and red go together really nicely. If you haven't picked up the audio drama, if you will, if you haven't picked it up in hardback written form, it's really good. It's written like a play with all the characters, like names, and then their dialogue. It's really good. I haven't started it yet. Eric, I know you're mostly through it. If you haven't picked it up, go ahead and get it. There's some big stuff coming down the line. Make sure you don't miss it. Spark of the Resistance came out last week. It's like a really short sort of young adult, almost young readers.
It's like if
book,
you read
really.
like
Super
Smuggler's
short.
Run, Weapon of a Jedi, like they've done these type of books before in the Journey 2s, so looking forward to checking that one out.
Yes. Then we have some really major works coming out really soon. Star Wars Resistance Reborn is the next adult novel that's currently slated for release, coming out November 5th. It's a full-length novel. It's going to have all the main characters that are in the Rise of Skywalker. It's got Poe is huge on the cover, Leia, Rey, Finn. Everyone's on the cover. It's the first really big book that we've gotten. If you're a new listener, you haven't heard us talking about it, make sure you pick it up. You can pre-order it. It's coming out November 5th. And then lastly, the last one I'll plug here is Force Collector. It's a young adult novel coming out November 19th, and we thought it was Nate from Crash of Fate, but apparently it's not. We don't know anything about this book. We have like virtually
we got our first
no
excerpt
knowledge of
this
this
past
book
week.
at all.
It dropped up, and
Yes.
it seems like it centers around a guy that has a power like Quinlan Voss that can touch the objects and then see their histories.
Yes,
but that's
the cover is super interesting. We broke it down. We like really looked at the cover in depth, like when they announced this book back at San Diego Comic-Con, I think it was. There's a lot of really cool stuff on the cover. It's a young adult novel. We've gotten a lot of really great young adult novels, so make sure you don't miss that one. That's coming out November 19th. And tons of other comics all coming out. We've already got all the new stuff just announced on the site. There's a really cool page on utini.com that's got all the release schedules. And if you pre-order through our website, you can click the Amazon link. We get a measly 4% of the sale, but it's a little bit extra that helps us pay for the bills with the website, which is shockingly expensive.
And one last thing that I don't want to miss. By the time this episode goes up on Thursday, Corey and Charles, Journey to Episode 9, Allegiance number 1 is out tomorrow as we're recording. So that's going to be with Amon Calamari and everything. And we get some new canon content going up to Episode 9. So make sure you head over to Comixology and grab that as well. Whew. But my friends, that's going to do it for this week's episode of The Living Force. If you are new, welcome. Don't forget to subscribe to this show wherever you get your podcasts and tune in every week to hear us at Utini talk about the Star Wars Expanded Universe. Please leave us a review on iTunes to help people find us, and head over to utini.com for reviews, articles, and comprehensive book profiles on every single story in the Star Wars galaxy. If you're looking to buy some of those books Corey was talking about and you want to help support the show, you got to look up your book on Utini, click the Amazon link in the profile, and we do get that 4% to help us with these bills. If you'd like to help us out more directly, you can find us on patreon.com/Utini, where you can join our amazing patrons Dylan Sasser, Adam Dyson, Timothy Dunlap, Rural Farmboy, Chris Richmond, Juliana Mendez, Adrian Carlson, Ross Greco, and Teratano. Whew, I love not being able to get through that in one breath. If you want your thoughts on this show, email us at livingforcepod@utini.com, tweet at us at livingforcepod, or join our Utini Discord community by going to utini.com/discord. You can find us all individually on Twitter. I am at Eric Eilerson. Corey is at Doc Star Wars MD. Charles is at C. Henkel. A special thank you, as always, to Matt Davenport, our amazing editor, Freddie, our producer, and Wes, our community manager. Thank you to Corey and Charles for podcasting me, and as always, may the Force be with you.
There is no hatred. There is joy. There is no division. There is union. There is no apathy. There is passion. There is no gatekeeping. There is community. This is the Utini Star Wars Fan Code. Embrace it, live by it, and above all, trust in the living Force. That's all for this week. Join our community and surround yourself with like-minded fans by visiting us online at utini.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you.